Good morning. Good morning. EB here on the Anything But Bland weekly update. It's Thursday. It's colder. Uh, sure feels like a little bit of winter coming, which is kind of nice. I like Thanksgiving to have a little bit of chill in the air, go outside with a hoodie on, walk the dog, spend time with the family, do a fire. I want to wish everybody in advance of next week a happy Thanksgiving. I am really thankful for everything I have in my life, my wife, my children, my friends, the followers and listeners who are willing to give their time to listen to me rant and talk about things that I think are important to me and to some of you, and even to the haters out there. I wish you a happy Thanksgiving. You know, we're all Americans. We may disagree on things, but at the end of the day, uh, we all believe in freedom. We all believe in democracy. We don't like people to be the subject of injustice. And at the end of the day, if somebody attacks America, they're attacking us all, and we stand up all for the same thing. So I wish everybody a happy Thanksgiving with their family and their friends, and let's take a time to reflect. And even for the people that disagree with me, I'm thankful that for you to be willing to voice your displeasure with me or disagree with me. So with that said, let's go. Let's not knock this out. I'm noticing a change in a lot of the platforms and a lot of the cable news stations since the election when Donald Trump won. Donald Trump won fair and square. Donald Trump mopped Kamala Harris, although right now he's under 50% in terms of the popular vote. Even though he beat her on the popular vote, he went under 50% when a lot of the mail-in ballots came in. So, but he does have a mandate, whether it's a capital M or a small m mandate, it doesn't really matter. Sorry, you're going to hear the trash truck beeping in the background. He does have a mandate. And so, what you're seeing on these cable stations, especially with MSNBC and CNN, their viewership has just dropped by 40% since the election. And it's really made these cable stations very, very nervous. Fox News and Newsmax have jumped by 50% since the election. And it was announced yesterday that Comcast, the owner of MSNBC, CNBC, and some of the others, are going to spin off CNBC, MSNBC, and a couple other cable stations to a new company that is going to be funded with $7 billion, which is a lot of money for a startup. But they're not going to have the platforms and the research from NBC News and Peacock. They're going to Comcast is going to focus on building them back up. So, you know, there's a lot of uncertainty in the cable television market, especially for people that look for a different viewpoint, not just the conservative viewpoint, but even looking for a liberal viewpoint, if you want to say CNN, and somewhat to the middle MSNBC, depending on who you listen to. I'm a big Morning Joe fan. I like the guests that they have on. And Joe Scarborough has received a ton of backlash, and so has Mika, because last Sunday they met with President Trump at Mar-a-Lago to try to bury the hatchet. I think it's smart. I wouldn't have done it, but I certainly understand why they did it, because it's better to be included in the discussion with the President of the United States and having him willing to come on your show, even if it's a different viewpoint. But they have spent the past 10 years railing Trump, sometimes justifiably so, other times a little bit more. It became personal because Trump made some statements against Mika Brzezinski when she had some plastic surgery on her face, that she was bleeding and looked ugly. And of course, he accused Joe Scarborough of murdering a former staff member that he was supposedly having an affair with. And he's reposted that lie, very hurtful, so much so that the widower of the woman who died wrote Trump and begged him, please stop talking about it. Joe Scarborough didn't murder my wife. but they did it. And a lot of people who are followers of MSNBC and also Mika and Joe were very disappointed because it looked like they were going and bending the knee to Donald Trump, which they were. These cable stations are going to die unless they learn to be balanced and give viewpoints from both sides, get more to the middle, stop with these cultural issues that the country just doesn't want, whether it's DEI or transgender or different things. Not that they don't have rights, but clearly the country is moving away from the progressive viewpoint as espoused by, AOC and Omar and a couple other of these representatives, far left representatives. I think the country's done with Nancy Pelosi. I think the country's done basically with Bill Clinton and Hillary Clinton, and it's time to move on. So I am noticing that on cable TV. The other thing I'm noticing is X, which I basically I post on X. It's easier for me. I know how to do it. I've never posted on Facebook. I've replied. But what happens is I post on X, and then people that work for me in the marketing department for my firm and also for me individually, they take my post, they put it on Facebook, Instagram, TikTok, yada, yada, yada. But I'm noticing that the X platform has gotten far more conservative. And on my feed, even though I didn't say I was following people, I guess X is pushing Elon Musk on me. They're pushing Donald Trump, other conservatives that I didn't follow. And so when I open it up, I don't see the normal posts that I usually see. The vitriol that I'm getting back on my posts is really personal. It's okay, I can take it. Some things are hurtful, but really personally attacking me and my beliefs. And so that's what I guess generated the new Blue Sky platform. And so I'm going to look into it. It wouldn't surprise me if the X platform loses listeners. I mean, I'm losing followers. I had 39,500 followers about 4 weeks ago, and now I'm down to 36,000 something. So I don't know whether it's because of my viewpoints that I've espoused, probably, that I'm losing listeners. But also I think it's because I'm criticizing Elon Musk, I'm criticizing Trump at times. So that's an interesting development. Good morning, Megan. I agree with you. I don't think we should have penises in women's bathrooms and vagina in men's bathrooms. I think if you were born with a penis, you go into, and you have a penis, you go into a men's room. But if you go through taking a surgery and you alter your body, that may be a different story. I don't know where to land on that. I'm not that smart enough. Megan, thank you so much. I don't know if I'm a great man. Good morning, Casey Odell. I don't know if I'm a great man. I know you disagree with my politics, but I appreciate you saying that I have a heart of gold. The next thing I want to talk about is Susan Smith, which is really close and personal to a lot of us in South Carolina. Probably will date me because I'm going to be 63 years old, but I remember the case as if it was yesterday. And it really was a traumatic case, obviously for the people involved, but for all of us in South Carolina and many throughout the world. The thought that a mother, because she was so selfish and she wanted a relationship with the boss that she worked with, who expressed that he didn't want to be saddled with children, would kill two beautiful boys, was just shocking. It was shocking to the conscience. Because Susan Smith didn't look like that serial killer or the person that was, mentally disturbed and exhibited this behavior over a long period of time. It was shocking because she blamed it on an African American man, and 9 days of national search and all the money that was expended by Chief Stewart at SLED and by Wells, the sheriff at Union County, and Tommy Pope was involved. At that time, he was a solicitor before he became a House member. And you saw the anguish in David, the father. Even then, how could somebody do this to my children? And he believed in his ex-wife, Susan Smith. And then as like 5, 6 days into it, Susan started saying some things that, you really started to question. And thank God SLED and everybody else was doing parallel investigations and suspected her from the start because of her story. But yesterday, she had her parole hearing, and David Smith, you looked at him, he's 53 years old, but he looked older because he's had to live with the fact that his two beautiful boys were killed by their mother. That woman took a life that he could have had with those boys, and the boys would be 33 and 31 years old today. And then you see the reenactment of the car going into the water in Union at the lake. And then they described that one of the kids had his hand on the window when they were discovered. She's an animal. Should she pay that price for the rest of her life? I believe so. Were there extenuating circumstances to do what she did? Not for me to judge that. That's God. I don't think there were. I know she claims she was sexually abused when she was a kid, but that doesn't mean you kill children. Do people, do they have the ability to be rehabilitated is the question. The answer is yes. Over time, the purpose of prison is retribution, deterrence, and rehabilitation. Retribution just to pay somebody for the heinous nature of the crime. Deterrence to prevent others from doing the same amount of crime. And rehabilitate to say, we're going to put you in prison and we're going to see if you can rehabilitate yourself. 30 years is a long time. Ordinarily, I would have said, you know what, 30 years, that's what parole's for. Let's look at what she's done in prison. Has she bettered herself? Has she helped others? Has she shown the amount of contrition that was necessary? But if you look at her prison record, it's abominable. There's drug charges. She had sexual relationship with a CO, one of the guards that guarded her, and he was interviewed and said, look, he fell into her web. She talks a great game, and she mesmerized me. A month and a half ago, she had the temerity of calling David on the phone or sending out a message to him and his family. Please don't object to my parole. Don't take a position. Are you kidding me? That just goes to show how willfully blind she is and almost, incapable of seeing the world from someone else's eyes, especially the father's eyes, the victim's eyes. And then like 3 weeks ago, she violated prison rules by talking to the media, and I guess there's going to be a documentary done, and she gave the names to some of the people on who should be interviewed for this documentary, which was clear prison violation rules. And when you see her, she has these glam shots. It doesn't look like a woman of contrition, of reflection. She's all make-upped up. She has a pretty face. And yesterday they had the parole hearing, and I made a statement to Fox News where I said the South Carolina State House had a greater chance of getting hit by a meteor than Susan Smith getting parole. I didn't think, though, that they would announce it so quickly in denying her parole. I thought they would take a day or two to reflect, but they just reflectively did it. And I think it was because of David's statements where he said, I will be here every 2 years. And he talked about the pain and the anguish that he has lived with and continues to live with. And so I don't see Susan Smith getting parole anytime soon. It was a unanimous vote against it, and she well deserved to stay in prison, and maybe she'll reflect more, maybe she'll conform to the rules more. She'll probably get parole someday when she's really old, feeble, and sick, but maybe not. She's going to have to answer to her God, and I do agree. Hey, Patty, good to see you this morning, Patty Dasher. She's my decoupage lady. Everybody look her up in Georgia. She does unbelievable decoupage. You'd love it. The next thing I want to talk about is what's going on in Washington. So we have, President-elect Trump the 45th president, who's now the 47th president, who's similar to Grover Cleveland, who served 2 terms but not consecutive in the late 1800s, appointing a lot of people, some really, really qualified people. May disagree with them politically, such as Marco Rubio, Doug Berman in energy. There's some people on immigration who have experience. I disagree that Kristi Noem should be the head of immigration. Don't know what her experience is. But the controversial selections, there are only really 4 of them. There's some other ones that you may disagree with, former House members who are on Fox News. But the 4 contentious ones, obviously, are the DOD guy, Matt Gaetz, Tulsi Gabbard for intelligence, and then Robert Kennedy for HHS. Kennedy's a lawyer, he's not a doctor. Don't know how much he knows about medicine. I know he knows a lot about environmental. He studies food, so he has some valid things about food and obesity and the preservatives we use in food, which is really a discussion that we should have. I think there wasn't a lot of vetting done because Trump didn't want to use the FBI for their background checks, so he hired private companies to do background checks. The Department of Defense guy clearly didn't disclose a sexual assault issue. Yes, he wasn't charged. He paid a settlement, no problem. People do it all the time when they're falsely accused. But there was really a tremendous amount of evidence on that sexual encounter. Not saying it was an assault, because he admitted to having sex with her. He admitted that they argued at the pool. There was some graphic testimony that the victim provided, as well as from others, witnesses that saw it. And so I think that may be a pick that's going to offend some of the senators. And we're going to talk about recess appointments and advice and consent of the Senate. Tulsi Gabbard, I respect her. She's fought for our country, not really in combat. She was a clerk position, served in the House of Representatives, not a stupid woman at all. But she has espoused some positions that even Nikki Haley yesterday said were un-American. She's talked to Assad in Syria, and she has agreed that for some reason she doesn't think he gassed his own people. She's been in contact with Putin and sympathized with Russia. She sympathizes with Iraq and some of the other Eastern European countries, like Hungary and Budapest and different despot countries where she says that they're misunderstood. I've listened to a lot of the intelligence people who said that in normal circumstances she would not get a top safe security clearance. Yes? Hello? Yeah, I'll be there in about 20 minutes, okay? So, sorry, somebody was knocking at my door. She wouldn't get a top security clearance. And, that's a real problem. And there's other countries who said that they're not going to share intelligence with her. So that's a big, big issue. Intelligence is a big issue in our country. Robert Kennedy, I think he's going to get through. Wouldn't be my pick. Whether he's an anti-vaxxer or he's going to say things that parents shouldn't get their kids vaccinated. He said on November 6th, I'm not going to stop vaccinations. I'm going to make it optional, which could cause a problem and increase on some things. So that's a problem. The Matt Gaetz pick is just beyond the pale. They've released all of his Venmo transactions that showed that he's paid thousands and thousands of dollars to escorts and different people. And that's not to say that he's the only one that's doing that. These politicians are brutal. Look, Marjorie Taylor Greene is somebody that I do not agree with on any level, not with the space lasers, not with her anti-Semitic comments that, Jews cause the electrical outages, or that the government is forcing hurricanes on Republican states. But she said something yesterday. She said, look, if you're going to release Matt Gaetz's report from the Ethics Committee, then you better release every other House and Senate member who has been accused of sexual assault and use taxpayer dollars to pay off these victims and people who have accused them to the tune of $17 million over the past 30 years, including Marjorie Taylor Greene herself, who seems to have made a claim for sexual harassment, as she said. And she said, if they want to dance, then let's dance, put it all out in the open. The first time I agree 100% with Marjorie Taylor Greene. I totally disagree with Matt Gaetz. I don't think he's qualified. He wasn't a solicitor. He wasn't a prosecutor, never handled a criminal case, was a lawyer for less than a year. Seems to be somebody who doesn't respect the institution. I get it. He wants to take a hatchet to the Justice Department, and so does Donald Trump. He has picked really good. Todd Blanche and the other guy are seasoned prosecutors. Those are the two that represented him in the New York trial. They're the deputies. If Todd Blanche was put in as Attorney General, I certainly would not have a problem. But Matt Gaetz is not qualified. He wouldn't be qualified to run for solicitor of Lexington County. It would be a joke. So those are interesting things. And so what they say is, we'll do a recess appointment. Recess appointment requires both houses, the Senate and the House, to agree to go into recess for 10 days. And John Thune would have to agree to it, as well as Mike Johnson, the Speaker of the House. John Thune's the new majority leader in connection with Mitch McConnell. And then the president could appoint these new cabinet officials without the advice and consent. The advice and consent is what the Senate is given by the Constitution to pass on the appointment of constitutional cabinet officials. And they don't like to relinquish that. The recess appointment clause happened way back before we had transportation, before we had Zoom, before we had phones and things like that. It was in place so that the government could run in the event that the House and Senate members couldn't get back. And so it gave the authority of the president to do these temporary appointments. But in modern society, when we have airplanes and trains and cars, the ability to get from one coast to the other in 2 hours, or we have Zoom, there really isn't a need for recess appointments. And so, it's not the job of the Senate to prevent the president from getting his picks. He won the election. He should be able to get the picks that he wants as long as they're qualified. You may disagree with them philosophically and politically, but that's not a reason why you shouldn't appoint them. But if people aren't qualified, that's a different story. And so there should be an up or down vote. They should get a full hearing, whether it's Gaetz, whether it's Gabbard, whether it's Pete Hegseth, or it's Bobby Kennedy. So that's one of the things I want to talk about. Judge Marchant is a 100% coward in New York City. He has pushed off from July to September to the end of October to November 12th to December the sentencing of Donald Trump for those convictions. And it does look like he's probably going to dismiss the charges or the conviction, and that is a cowardly act by a judge. That's the job of an appellate court. He put that case to a jury. He ruled on motions to dismiss and denied them. And he gave the case to the jury and instructed them, and they rendered their verdict after a 3.5-week trial. So it's up to this judge to sentence him. Whether he sentences him to nothing, whether he says time served because you made bond, or you got to do 10 hours of community service, or nothing. You have to sentence based on what the jury did, and he's a 100% coward judge. I think he's scared. I think he's scared for his daughter, who Trump had said worked for the Democratic National Committee as a marketing person, and I think he's scared for himself. The New York Post is a conservative paper. It's owned by the Murdoch. It's owned Murdoch Publishing, who owns Fox News, and they are 100% pro-conservative, pro-Republican, pro-Trump, and they have been for the last 4 years. They have come out and said you must ditch Gaetz and Gabbard. They are not qualified. Now that comes from them. They believe Hegseth is, and they believe that Bobby Kennedy is, but they said that those two are abominable picks and that Trump should let them go. And now what they're thinking is, all the attention's on Gates, that they'll sacrifice Gates, Trump will pick somebody else, and then Senate will push everybody through it, maybe something that will be done. So I did some history, research in history. And do you believe that during the Eisenhower administration, they deported 1 million Latino and Hispanic people during the 8 years of Eisenhower, from 52, I guess, to 60. And it was called Operation Wetback. And wetback is a very derogatory term that racists and xenophobes use towards Latinos. But wetback, I looked up what that means. It was when the people came across the Rio Grande River from Mexico to America, and the sun was on their back. They were wet when they came through the river, and that's called the wetback. It's a pejorative term. It's hurtful. It's hateful. But I did not know that 1 million Mexicans were deported during the Eisenhower administration. Linda McMahon has been appointed as the Department of Education. Look, I hate her background in the WWE and letting her daughter hit her, or she hit her daughter, and all those stupid scripts. Vince McMahon making out in front of another woman in front of her in the ring. Look, she debased herself, but she's a sharp woman. Don't get me wrong. That woman ran a multi-billion-dollar organization at WWE. We may disagree with her that she doesn't have an educational background, but look, he made Betsy DeVos, I think was her name, the owner of Amway, head of education in his first term. So Linda McMahon should go through. The next thing I want to talk about is Ukraine. Biden this week let Ukraine finally shoot long-range missiles into Russia. And they shot 6 missiles. They're $1.5 million each. And they took out a lot of weapons and munition depots in Russia. And I was listening to Admiral James DeBritis, a 4-star admiral, who said that, look, you can have a disagreement over the amount of money that we're sending to Ukraine, but what you don't realize is what has happened to Russia during this 3-year war. Russia has lost its military. They're conscripting 50 to 60-year-old men to come into the military. They've lost over 5,000 men who have fled the country, educated men with technology and computers who didn't want to serve in the military. They've lost so many of their human capital who were in the military. They have lost 80% of their conventional weapons, according to General DeBritis, and they're continuing to deplete their arsenal and their munitions. They literally are a paper tiger. We could go through them like shit through a goose if we had to. Now, obviously, they have ICBMs and the nuclear weapons, and they've threatened now to use nuclear weapons on Ukraine. But we have, by giving this money to Ukraine, we have set Russia back 50 years in terms of their military capability, their loss of military personnel, and their weaponry. It is just a really good benefit from this. And we can't overlook the fact that now they're looking to North Korea for help in their army and munitions because they're out of people and they're out of munitions. It could escalate the war. It could lead to a World War III. So we're going to have to see what Trump does when he comes in office to say that he could settle this war in 24 hours. I saw a story about underwater aliens, which was pretty interesting, that Congress had a hearing on underwater aliens. I don't think aliens are living in the ocean, but you know, who knows? The Democratic governor of Illinois and the Democratic governor of Colorado, and I think he is the first openly gay one since the New Jersey Governor McCreevy came out in about 30 years ago or 20 years ago. They said they're going to take a position against the federal government if they try to come into their state to remove illegal immigrants. So that's going to be a really interesting kind of conflict when that happens. He also named Dr. Oz to be the head of some of the I think some of the food and drug and some other things. Look, Dr. Oz has a lot of good ideas about vaccines. He believes in vaccines, which is kind of different than Kennedy. But he was a little kooky at the end with all the products that he was selling. But again, that's Trump's choice. He's a doctor. It probably should go through. Shouldn't go unnoticed that there's been no blacks and no Latinos, and I don't think any Asians to the cabinet by Trump. Now, he ran on, I'm going to be there for you women, I'm going to be your champion, and also to blacks, he said that I'm going to help you with more jobs and greater advancement in society. Shouldn't be lost on the public. If you look at his cabinet, it's a bunch of white men. Tulsi Gabbard is the only cabinet official who's female other than Kristi Noem. He did do a female chief of staff, and I think she's a very qualified person. Don't agree with her politically. So let's just keep kind of a record on that. Alex Jones InfoWar was sold to a group of people who were part of this Sandy Hook case. So they bought his InfoWars, which is a poetic justice. I saw that. The question is, should Joe Biden on the way out pardon a whole slew of people? And I think he should start thinking about that, because I looked it up. In the Nixon case, Ford pardoned Nixon, and he was not criminally charged. You can pardon somebody for future criminal charges. So if he wants to heal our country and prevent Trump from actually arresting people like Nancy Pelosi, Liz Cheney, Adam Kinzinger, Adam Schiff, why doesn't he just do a pardon list of pardoning 10,000 people, all the generals that are DEI generals that Flagstaff said he's going to either prosecute or terminate from their positions. All the politicians that Trump has said, including Merrick Garland, Joe Biden, Hunter Biden, he should pardon his son. Who cares at this point? There's also talk that should he step aside right now to make Kamala Harris the president for the last 2 months to be the first female president? He should if he's incompetent. He should not if he's still competent. And there's a real question now on his competency. He was at this G10 meeting or 8 meeting in South America, and he gave no statements to the press, which is really extraordinary and problematic. Nazis are marching in Ohio. That's a real problem. A lot of anti-Semitism is popping up. So that's going to be an interesting thing now that Trump is elected. Are we going to see more of these white supremacy type groups? I read that the transition team is working on court-martialing these generals and officers who put forward the DEI agenda. These people are only following orders, but I read that they're doing that also in connection with the Afghanistan withdrawal, which was a debacle, clearly done wrong, with soldiers dying, but they were following orders. So I don't think that's a good idea. But again, that's Trump's prerogative, and Biden should pardon these people before he leaves office. Because are we going to have a governing body ruling government, or are we going to just have a ruler? That's the question. Moving into sports, the Lions are unbelievable. The Detroit Lions, top to bottom. Jared Goff has turned out to be a great quarterback. Dan Campbell is a player's coach. The organization. You notice football teams that are successful have really good organization. The Chiefs, the Steelers that are 9-2. The Steelers don't have much talent. They have Russ Wilson at quarterback. They have T.J. Watt, who's incredible. Mika Fitzpatrick, but that's about it. And they're 9-2. Why? They've had stability at their coaching. They have had stability in their ownership. The Chiefs are so good. Yes, they've lost. I think it's a good thing for them. The Bills beat them, but the Bills always beat them in the regular season. The playoffs are a big difference. Getting rid of the undefeated season for the Chiefs, I think, is good. It was just noise. But I put my money on Patrick Mahomes when it comes to the playoffs. They know how to win. The Cleveland Cavaliers got beat by the Boston Celtics, which is amazing. You know, Celtics are doing real well. Jason Tatum is pretty pissed off. because he was sat during the Olympics by the coach who coaches the Warriors. I read something about the 3-point field goals. It's twice as many 3-point attempts that were done in 2014 are being done now. Twice as many. Now that's obviously as a result of Seth Curry and some other sharpshooters. But back in my day, there was really only like Larry Bird and Craig Hodges and John Price that were 3-point shooters. You had Magic Johnson, you had AI. They were penetrating. Michael Jordan penetrated, distributed the ball. And now what you're seeing is the other night, the Boston Celtics took 64 3-point shots. And before there was maybe one or two people on a team that were 3-point shooters. Now you're seeing Joel Embiid and Jokic and Wemby. Wemby for the San Antonio Spurs has just turned 20 years old. He had 50 points the other night. Giannis Antetokounmpo for the Bucks had 59. And they're shooting 3-point shots, which is really, really extraordinary. I think the MVP of the NFL right now is Josh Allen, without question, or Saquon Barkley for my Eagles. It was for a while Lamar Jackson, but he's had some really bad games lately, and I don't ever trust him in the playoffs. Heisman Trophy winners are either going to be Travis Hunter or Shedeur Sanders for Colorado, without question. Without question. Travis Hunter, two-way player, is unbelievable. Deion Sanders may go to the Dallas Cowboys. Look, you could say what you want about Deion. His second year, he's lost 2 games. They could find their way into the playoffs. This was a team that was 1-11 for many years before he took over. Obviously, the guy knows how to motivate people and coach. Patrick Mahomes has had progressively over the last 3 years worse and worse seasons, which is extraordinary, and he still won the Super Bowl. So I think he still has more interceptions than touchdowns, but again, he's the GOAT right now in the game. The next thing is the Tyson-Jake Paul fight. We were in Chicago last weekend. And by the way, Chicago is the most amazing city I have ever been to. I went to Chicago with all of these misconceptions: crime, dirty, unsafe. It's a bad city, drugs, everything. It's the cleanest city in the world that I've ever been to. The Center City area, which is probably a 3-mile area. There wasn't one piece of trash. There wasn't one stitch of graffiti that I saw. Not any scaffolding like you see in New York City with makeshift sidewalks and, you're zigzagging here and there. Not a lot of traffic. You're not walking into people. There were no cranes, no construction. Just the most beautiful buildings I have ever seen in my life. The architecture and the food in that city was unbelievable. We took an 1.5-hour river cruise and learned so much about Chicago and all the myths and misperceptions and misconceptions. I don't need to go to New York anymore. I'm just going to take the same 2-hour flight and go to Chicago. The only thing it probably doesn't have that New York has is probably more theater, but the food was unbelievable. So we had a really good time. And while we were there, we watched the Mike Tyson-Jake Paul fight. It was a disgrace to boxing. Now, from Tyson's standpoint, at 58 years old, the guy looked good. He certainly looked much better in training, much faster, leaner. Jake Paul knows how to box. I give the guy credit. He turned out from an internet influencer to a boxer who can box. And I think he took it easy on Tyson at the end. He could have knocked him out. Mike wasn't Mike at all during that fight, except for like the first 30 seconds. I think he was slow. I think something happened to him. I don't know. He smokes a lot of dope every day. He owns a dope company, cannabis company. He was slurring his words. He was off balance. If he threw a punch, he almost slipped and fell. And it was sad. It was amazing that he made it 8 rounds at 2 minutes a round, not 3 minutes a round. I give him credit for that. I couldn't box for 8 rounds. But he was a shadow of his former self. It looked like Muhammad Ali and Willie Mays to me. And I don't want to remember Mike Tyson like that. Mike Tyson was an animal. If you look at his mashup of knockouts that he had in the 80s, it's unbelievable. His first 21 fights, like 20 were by knockout and 14 were in the first round. The man was the fastest, hardest puncher in the history of boxing. And I felt bad for him. But he made $20 million and Jake Paul made $40 million. So who am I to say? Almost finishing up a useless fact. The seventh inning stretch I learned yesterday morning came from a guy named Father Jasper, who recommended to the Yankees to do it about 40 years ago. He was the president of Manhattan College, so it was invented by a priest, the seventh inning stretch. In conclusion, my book is coming out next week. We are at the top of Amazon's hot list. Early orders have been placed. I've ordered probably about 200 books for myself. We had a function Sunday night where a lot of people came and took the barcode and are ordering the book. I'm really, really excited about it. Cautiously optimistic, let's say that. Let's go to some wrap-up questions. What do I think of DEI and alphabet folks in the military? I think there is a place in the military, certainly for women to be in combat. That is just a disgrace that Pete Hegseth said that women don't belong in combat. There's a lot of women that can kick my ass that are Rangers and been through the Marines. Certainly great pilots, great helicopter pilots. So I think that's bullshit. I think the whole issue of transgender in the military, maybe there's 12 people in a military of 500,000 people. It's not a big issue. DEI and the woke stuff, I think we got to tamp it back. I don't think society's ready for all this change. It's too much. I don't like when I watch TV constantly, that I see pharmaceutical commercials, and in those commercials are blended families, which are fine, traditional families, fine, some gay families, which are certainly fine. But we are seeing too much of this woke stuff, this cultural war. And the country said in the last election, we're not there for it yet. So I think we should take a step back and decide what's the best way that we should deal with rights for LGBTQ, which they should have every right in the world, and how it relates to our children and what we do in society. Casey Odell asked me, what criteria must the conviction have in order for the defendant to be considered for resentencing? That's a tough thing. It just depends on, parole. Resentencing would have to be if there was a conviction that was overturned. You look at the nature of the crime. You look at the criminal himself, how they live their life, what they've done with their life since they've been charged. So the Menendez brothers received life without the possibility of parole, and they've been recommended for resentencing. Can it happen the opposite way, Casey asked? Whether somebody is so bad in prison, we're going to resentence them to more time. The answer is no, you can't do it for the original sentence, but you can resentence them and sentence them for new crimes, and you can certainly use what they've done in jail. Many criminals who are facing a life sentence have no repercussion in their mind, so they kill in jail, they do drugs, they violate stuff. Susan Smith, in my mind, and that's what Casey was getting at, just doesn't deserve mercy right now because she hasn't shown that she's rehabilitated. She is still a manipulative, conniving person, which is a character flaw of hers. Catherine asked, how about the rumors that A-listers from the Combs parties knew exactly what they're doing and they're going straight to settle? Yeah, I think these people don't want to be outed, but I do believe they should be outed, and I don't believe you should be paid. They should be able to pay money and withstand the public scrutiny, especially if there were underage sex crimes done. It's done all the time in civil litigation. I have settled cases where my clients have been accused of sexual harassment, or I've settled cases for victims of sexual harassment. And because they needed the money, they've agreed to a confidentiality clause. It's just part of our society. So let's look down at the list. I want to see everybody who's here. Megan Cook Skaggs said that she agreed about Tyson. I don't think there's any chance of Alex Murdaugh ever getting pardoned. There is no way. There's no politician, governor that would ever, and then on a federal level, the President of the United States would ever do that. The backlash would be incredible. I think he's going to spend the rest of his life in prison, and he needs to. Becky Cover said bypassing the advice and consent through recess appointments for the cabinet is wrong. I totally agree. Megan Cook said that she's only served 15 years, Susan Smith, for the death of each one of her sons. I agree, that's not enough. Casey O'Dell again said that Twitter is too toxic, X for her, and I'm starting to believe the same. So I appreciate everybody listening. I want again to wish you a happy Thanksgiving. I'm really excited. This is my favorite time of the year, Thanksgiving. Into the Christmas holidays, starts the ski season. Everybody seems to get along better during the next month. So let's look at each other and say we appreciate each other and we're thankful to each other. I'll talk to you next week. Bye-bye.